The Galactic Predation Council Hall was an awe-inspiring sight towering almost infinite in scale. The ceiling stretched miles above, a complex web of crystalline panels refracting light into sharp, dazzling shards. The marble floors gleamed beneath the immense weight of alien eyes watching from every angle. The council chamber was filled with predators, creatures of all shapes and sizes, each one a living testament to their species' evolutionary dominance. There were towering beasts with scales like iron, sleek predators cloaked in shimmering fur, and sharp-eyed raptors with wingspan wide enough to blot out the sun. It was the most terrifying room Ethan Reyes had ever entered. His heart pounded against his ribs as he stood at the threshold, barely able to suppress the nervous tremors running through his body. He had been preparing for this moment for years, studying, learning their languages, understanding their customs. But standing there in front of them, it all felt so small. He had no claws, no natural armor. His skin was soft, his teeth flat, his body scarred but not invincible. The only thing he could rely on was the strength of his will, the choice to fight when others would have run. Ethan inhaled deeply, slow and steady, and exhaled through his nose. His boots were polished to a high shine, his trousers neat, tucked into place. His shirt, though, was just a bit too tight, feeling more like a shackle than a piece of clothing. But he didn't flinch. The photograph in his pocket, the picture of his mother, smiling beside a wounded wolf she had patched up, was the only thing that kept him grounded. This hearing wasn't supposed to be hard, it was meant to be a formality. Earth was applying for Tier 4 status as an apex predator species joining the ranks of the galaxy's elite. To most, it was a simple matter. Earth had the numbers, but to the Council it was an insult. A molten quartz-skinned creature towering in stature leaned forward from his seat, the weight of eons pressing into every word that escaped his lips. Earth representative, the voice rumbled, gravel mixed with steel. You come before us claiming predator status. You come with soft skin, flat teeth, without claws or natural armor. Show me your fangs. Laughter rippled through the room, low and mocking. The council members, creatures of unimaginable power, exchanged glances, some clicking their mandibles, others baring fangs in cruel amusement. But Ethan didn't flinch. He stood tall, hands at his sides, fingers curled into tight fists to prevent them from shaking. Proof, the molten quartz creature demanded again, his voice colder now. If you wish to stand here, then show me your proof. The room fell silent. Ethan's pulse raced, but his face remained impassive. He reached behind his neck, felt the clasp of his shirt. With deliberate calm, he unbuttoned it, each movement slow, controlled. He could feel their eyes on him, those strange alien eyes that had seen worlds burn and species rise and fall in the blink of an eye. His shirt came off, and for a long moment he stood before them, exposed, his body a map of scars. The council leaned in, their eyes narrowing, the laughter dying down. You want proof? Ethan's voice was steady, low. Count scars with me. He lifted his left arm slowly, wincing slightly at the strain in his shoulder. The burned scars on his arm were pale against his tan skin, a reminder of the firebomb detonation he had survived in the Sahel during a counter-predator operation. He turned his torso slightly, showing them the deep gouge across his ribs, a jagged line left by a rogue polar bear in the Alaskan wilds. A polar bear, he said, his voice tight. Tranks failed, grappled with it, took the claws to my ribs, I survived. The room was still. Ethan paused, his breath, though steady, caught for a moment. He could feel the weight of their stares, the sharp focus of their gaze drilling into him. He let them absorb the gravity of his words. He turned slightly, exposing the right side of his torso. There, under the thin layer of skin, were the faint impressions of jaguar teeth that had punctured through his muscle during a mission in the Manos ruins, an ambush by the apex predator of the jungle. Jaguar had to limp out, muscles were shredded. No one spoke. A ripple of sound moved across the council. The air seemed to thicken, the tension rising. Ethan didn't stop. He moved to his back, revealing the long, puckered claw scars that marked his spine, remnants of a fight with a mountain lion. His ribs still hurt when he raised his arms, but he had learned to push through it. Mountain lion, he said, voice unwavering. Had to strangle it with my bare hands after my rifle jammed. It almost severed my spine. Still no one spoke. Ethan turned around, every scar on his body a story of survival. He wasn't boasting. He was simply showing them what it meant to fight, to stand when others would fall. I'm not here to boast about what I've survived, Ethan continued. I'm here because we humans don't stop, not because we're stronger, not because we have claws or natural armor, but because we make the choice to stand and fight. A young alien delegate with feathered crests and sharp, jagged features snorted, unimpressed. What are these random accidents? He sneered. They do not prove that your kind hunts apex predators, they prove that you survive by luck. Ethan's jaw tightened. I don't call them trophies, he said quietly, but records of choices. I could have died many times, but I chose to face predators before they hurt anyone else. He stood there, letting the silence stretch. The eyes of the council members were no longer mocking. Some were thoughtful, others hesitant. The young delegate with the feathers spoke again, this time quieter, more curious. What makes you so sure you belong here, human? Ethan's voice was steady, but there was a cold edge to it now. Because you will not find a species as dangerous as one that knows it should not survive, but keeps coming back anyway. The tension in the room hung thick, heavy. The council members glanced at each other, their judgmental eyes flicking over Ethan's form, now showing them everything that made him who he was: scars, weaknesses, and the unyielding will to protect those he loved. And just before they could speak, Ethan turned and walked slowly toward the exit, feeling the weight of their silence like a physical force pressing down on him. He had shown them his scars, his proof, and now it was up to them to decide. Ethan Reyes leaned against the cold, metallic wall of the hallway as the heavy doors to the council chamber hissed shut behind him. The adrenaline from the tense confrontation still thrummed in his veins, but his breath came in shallow bursts. His body ached from the strain of standing before the council, each scar reminding him of the battles he had fought and survived. Every inch of his skin was a testament to the price he had paid to stand here today. He felt the phantom pain of the jaguar's teeth still embedded deep in his thigh, the sharp twinge of the polar bear's claws on his ribs. His back, though healed, still bore the memory of the mountain lion's attack. They were not just scars, they were the stories of a human who had chosen to fight, not because he was stronger or faster than the predators he faced, but because he believed that if he didn't, others would pay the price. Ethan had never asked for the scars. They had come unbidden, each one a mark of survival, of perseverance, and above all of choice. A choice to stand when others would have fled. A choice to fight when the odds were stacked against him. A choice to be a predator, not because of nature's design, but because it was what had to be done. As he limped down the sterile, quiet corridor of the embassy, Ethan allowed himself a moment to reflect. His mind drifted back to the days before this moment, to the harsh, unforgiving lands of Earth that had shaped him. A life shaped by survival. Ethan had grown up in the rewild zones of Alaska, where the wilderness wasn't a place of beauty or peace, but a place where life and death were separated by the thinnest of margins. His mother, once an esteemed wildlife rehabilitator, had taught him the value of understanding apex predators. She had lost an arm to a Kodiak bear during a rescue mission. Yet she never blamed the bear. She had taught Ethan that every predator, every living being, acted out of necessity, not malice. They hunted to survive just as humans did. From an early age, Ethan had been exposed to the harsh realities of survival. His mother's work had brought him close to some of Earth's most dangerous animals, but it wasn't until he joined the military that he truly understood what it meant to be on the edge of death, to stare into the eyes of a predator and know that the only way out was to fight back. The war zones he had fought in had been just as brutal as the wilds he grew up in. From the jungles of South America, where jaguars and other predators stalked their prey with deadly precision, to the frozen tundra of the Arctic, where even the strongest were at the mercy of nature's fierce wrath, Ethan had learned that survival wasn't guaranteed. It wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about outsmarting the predator, using tools, tactics, and patience. One of his most vivid memories was from a mission in the Alaskan Rewild Zone. A rogue polar bear had become a serious threat to the research teams working there. They had tried to tranquilize it, but the beast was far too resilient. In the end, it was Ethan who was called in to deal with the situation. The polar bear incident. The wind howled across the snow-covered plains as Ethan crouched low in the blizzard, the cold biting through his jacket and into his bones. His breath came in white clouds, freezing instantly in the frigid air. He could hear the heavy thuds of the bear's steps in the distance, the crunch of snow under its massive paws. It was close, too close. Ethan's hands were shaking, but not from fear. He had long since learned that fear was a luxury he could not afford. His mission was simple: neutralize the threat. But when the tranquilizer darts failed, the mission shifted to something much darker. Now it was about survival, not just his own, but the lives of everyone who depended on him. He heard the bear's roar before he saw it, a sound that sent a shiver down his spine. The creature burst from the snowstorm like a ghost, its massive body moving with terrifying speed. Ethan barely had time to react. The bear charged, and in that moment, everything he had learned about survival kicked in. He dodged to the side, but not fast enough. The bear's massive paw raked across his side, sending him sprawling into the snow. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. He felt the crack of ribs and the tear of muscle, but he didn't stop. The bear was upon him, its jaws snapping inches from his face. In a move that felt more like instinct than choice, Ethan wrapped his legs around the bear's throat. He used every ounce of strength he had left, choking the life out of the beast. It was not pretty, it was not graceful, it was pure survival. When it was over, Ethan stood, gasping for air, blood soaking into the snow. The bear lay at his feet, its massive form unmoving. Ethan's hands were slick with blood, his own and the bear. He had survived, but it had cost him. His side was torn open and he could barely breathe, but he had won. He had faced a predator and killed it. The scar that remains. The scar on his side from that fight was still there, a jagged line across his ribs. It had healed over time, but the memory never left. It was a reminder that survival wasn't just about strength. It was about making the choice to survive when the world and the predators that roamed it told you that you didn't belong. And it wasn't just the physical scars that had stayed with him. The emotional weight of that fight, the knowledge that the bear had been a victim of circumstances just as he was, had shaped Ethan in ways he didn't fully understand. He wasn't a killer, he wasn't a monster. He was simply someone who had been forced to fight for his life just as any predator would. Ethan's resolve. As he sat in the embassy, his body still aching from the trial before the council, Ethan thought about that fight with the polar bear. He thought about his mother's words, "We live by choice." His scars were not just proof of his survival, they were proof that humanity, despite its flaws, could choose to stand when the world expected them to fall. He had fought and won not because he was an apex predator, but because he had made the choice to survive, to protect, and to fight for the future. Ethan's reflection was interrupted by a soft beep from his wrist device. A message had arrived. It was from Ambassador Nora Kinley. "They're deliberating," the message read. "We'll know their decision soon." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, his mind racing. The council had been silent after he left the room, and that silence had weighed heavily on him. They had seen his scars, they had heard his words, but would it be enough? Would humanity truly be accepted into the ranks of the apex predators? Or was the council still too blind to see that humanity's strength didn't come from claws or fangs, but from the will to fight, the will to survive, and the will to protect those who could not protect themselves? He had done his part, now it was up to them to decide. Ethan's fingers trembled slightly as he held the data pad in his hands. The words on the screen were simple, but they hit him like a physical blow. His heart skipped a beat as he read the first line. Tier 4 Predator Status, Provisional Approval. For a moment he couldn't breathe. The weight of the council's decision hit him all at once. His mind swirled. Was it real? Had they truly accepted humanity as one of the galaxy's apex predators? Or was this just another political maneuver, a token gesture to placate Earth's request? He turned to Nora, his face a mask of disbelief. "Provisional, what does that mean?" She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe. Her gaze was unwavering, but there was a hint of caution in her eyes, as though she were preparing him for something worse. "It means they're willing to accept us into the ranks, but with conditions." Ethan's stomach churned. Conditions? What kind of conditions? Nora stepped forward, holding her own data pad. She passed it to Ethan, and his eyes skimmed over the next set of details. The conditions were clear. Humanity's actions would be closely monitored, cataloged by the Council for the foreseeable future. Every interaction with other apex species would be scrutinized. Any failure would result in immediate revocation of status, and the planet would be classified as a dangerous species, no longer welcome in the galactic community. "Great," Ethan muttered under his breath, his hands clenching around the device. "So it's not acceptance, it's a test." Nora nodded. "Exactly. They want to see if we can live up to the label. Can we truly survive as predators? Not just survive, but thrive. Can we handle the responsibility of standing alongside them?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. The council's decision was anything but final. It was a trial, a proving ground. A challenge. The room was silent for a moment as the weight of the news settled in. Ethan thought about the countless battles he had fought, about the scars that marked his body and soul. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for humanity's place in the galaxy, to prove that humanity wasn't just a weak species struggling to survive, it was a species capable of standing tall, even among the galaxy's most deadly creatures. He could feel the faint tremors in his limbs, the exhaustion that had followed him since his confrontation with the council. But now, with the decision in his hands, a new resolve filled him. "I'm not backing down," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside him. "We're going to prove them wrong. We're going to show them that humanity can stand toe-to-toe with the best of them." Nora's lips quirked upward in a rare smile, but there was a caution in her eyes. "It won't be easy. The Council will be watching, but not just them. There are factions in the galaxy that are less than thrilled about humans rising in status. There are already whispers about your display in the Council Hall." Ethan's face hardened. He knew the risks, but he was used to being underestimated. It was in humanity's nature to surprise, to adapt, to fight back. And the Council, they were about to learn what happened when you pushed a human too far. The unseen threat. Back in the council chambers, the decision had not been as clear-cut as the message had suggested. Despite the provisional approval, the mood among the delegates had been tense. After Ethan's departure, whispers had spread like wildfire. Some believed that humanity's display of survival instincts in the council room had been a mere fluke, a series of lucky accidents. Others saw it for what it was, a moment of pure, unyielding human willpower. Saucily, the aquatic delegate who had initially questioned Ethan, had been the first to break the silence. He had stood, his translucent skin glistening under the dim lights, and asked a question that no one had dared to voice. Why does a species so ill-equipped continue to climb the predator hierarchy? Why is humanity still here? At first, the question was met with skepticism. The razor-winged delegate from the Drenny Expanse, known for his sharp, calculating mind, had scoffed at the idea of humans rising to such a level. "They lack natural weaponry. How can they claim to belong to the same group as the true apexes?" he had said, his voice tinged with derision. But Saucely had pressed on, his gaze fixed firmly on the molten quartz-skinned leader. We've cataloged Earth's fauna, we've studied their ecosystems, Tier 4 hostile, dense, diverse, and yet humanity survives it, not with fangs, not with claws, but with ingenuity, with choice. The council had fallen into a rare silence after that. The feathered delegate from the Tequelin system, a species known for their ambush tactics and sharp hunting instincts, had been the first to break the silence. If humanity is truly capable of surviving on this level, then perhaps we've been wrong, perhaps they've earned their place after all. But there had been opposition. Many still saw humanity as an unknown, a species without the physical advantages that other predators possessed, yet still capable of surviving in environments where others would perish. To some, this made humanity a threat, a dangerous anomaly in the natural order. And so the council had voted and the decision had been made. Humanity's status would be provisional. They would be allowed to stand among the predators, but they would be watched. Every move, every interaction, every hunt would be scrutinized. If they failed, they would be cast out. A new mission. Ethan sat at the table in the embassy, his fingers idly tracing the edge of the data pad as he absorbed the implications of the council's decision. Provisional approval meant that humanity had a chance. But it also meant that every mistake, every misstep would be closely observed, and the slightest failure could mean disaster. The more he thought about it, the clearer his path became. He wasn't just fighting for Earth's place in the galaxy, he was fighting for the survival of humanity as a whole. He had to show them that humans didn't need fangs or claws to be predators. They needed something else: resilience, ingenuity, and the unrelenting will to survive. Nora was right, there were factions in the galaxy that would never accept humanity's rise, but Ethan had never been one to back down from a challenge. He wasn't alone in this fight. He had allies, people who had seen humanity's potential, who believed in the strength that came from choice and not instinct, and together they would show the galaxy what it meant to be human. The message from the council was clear: no more games, no more politics. The time had come for humanity to prove itself or lose everything. Ethan Reyes didn't hesitate. He had lived his life by one simple rule: when the world gives you a challenge, you face it head-on. Now it was no different. The council had given him a trial, a brutal arena, and a ticking clock. Earth's status as an apex predator species rested on the success or failure of this mission. He stood in the Terran embassy's hangar, looking at the spacecraft that would take him to Vantor. The ship was sleek and advanced, built for the harshest conditions the galaxy could throw at it. A handful of specialized tools and weapons lay on the bench beside him, nothing too flashy, just what he needed to survive the unknown terrain of Vantor. The planet's environment was infamous. Vantor was a world where few species had ever survived, its surface teeming with hostile creatures and unpredictable weather. The arena that the council had chosen was located in the southern hemisphere, a dangerous region known for its dense, toxic jungles and vicious apex predators. Ethan's mind raced through the preparations. He wasn't going in blind. He knew what the council expected: not just survival, but dominance. The message was clear: humanity had to prove that it could stand toe-to-toe with the most lethal species in the galaxy. "Do you really think you're ready for this?" Nora's voice broke through his thoughts. She was standing at the door, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ethan turned to face her, adjusting his jacket, the weight of his gear settling against his shoulders. He could feel the familiar ache in his body, the scars from past battles, the old injuries that still made themselves known when he pushed too hard, but none of that mattered now. He was on the clock. "I've been ready since I stood before them in that council hall," he replied. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "This isn't about me anymore. This is about showing them that we belong here." Nora nodded, but her gaze softened. She knew what was at stake. "Just remember, Ethan, you don't have to do this alone. You're not the only human who's survived the wilds. We've got your back." Ethan didn't respond right away. The weight of her words lingered in the air. He appreciated her support, but he knew this was his fight. His scars were his own, earned in the most dangerous places on Earth. It wasn't just about proving himself anymore. It was about proving that humanity's spirit, its ingenuity, could stand as equals with the galaxy's fiercest predators. He nodded curtly. "I'll be back soon." The journey to Vantor. The spacecraft hurtled through the atmosphere, its engines humming steadily beneath the cockpit. As Vantor's surface came into view, Ethan felt a pang of nervous energy course through him. It was beautiful in an alien way, wild, untamed, a planet where only the strongest could survive. He gazed out the window, watching the dense jungles below, the churning seas off in the distance. The landscape seemed endless, and the horizon was darkened by thick, rolling clouds. Ethan had trained for situations like this. He had prepared for the worst, but this was unlike anything he'd ever faced. The council wasn't just testing his survival skills. They wanted to see if humanity had the raw instinct to claim its place as a predator. As the ship descended through the atmosphere, the turbulence increased, rattling the frame. The ship shook violently as it broke through the clouds, and Ethan gripped the armrests, his pulse quickening. This wasn't just another mission. This was a trial by fire. He heard a warning chime from the control panel. landing sequence initiated. The ship finally hit the ground with a heavy thud. The doors opened, revealing the dense jungle ahead. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of alien plants and decaying organic matter mixing in the atmosphere. It was a place where survival was a gamble and the stakes were high. Ethan checked his gear one last time before stepping out into the wilds of Vantor. The temperature hit him like a wall, a suffocating heat that made his skin crawl. He swallowed hard, adjusting his helmet and visor to block out the oppressive humidity. There was no turning back now. The jungle stretched out before him, an endless sea of twisted alien vegetation. Huge vines hung down from the trees and bioluminescent fungi glowed faintly in the shadows. Every step he took was carefully calculated, his eyes scanning the terrain looking for threats. The creatures of Vantor were legendary for their lethality. He didn't know what would come after him, but he had to be ready for anything. The council had given him no specifics about what he would face in the arena, but the terrain itself was a challenge. The jungles were crawling with apex predators, beasts that thrived in the harshest conditions, evolved to hunt and kill anything that moved. Some of these creatures were larger than anything humanity had encountered. Some could move faster than a predator's instincts allowed, and some were simply smarter, more cunning, ready to outthink and outlast any challenger. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He was not just a soldier anymore. He was a human standing on alien soil, ready to show the galaxy what humanity was made of. The first encounter. No sooner had he taken his first step into the jungle than the air was pierced by a guttural roar. The sound vibrated through the ground beneath his boots, sending a shiver down his spine. The trees parted ahead, and a massive creature emerged from the underbrush. It was unlike anything he had seen before, an apex predator covered in thick, jagged armor plates, its body rippling with muscle. Its eyes were glowing a fierce yellow, and its teeth were long, serrated, made for tearing through flesh. It was a hunter, and it was coming for him. Ethan's pulse raced, but his mind remained calm. He had faced death before, and this was no different. He dropped to one knee, quickly unslinging his rifle. The creature roared again, its claws digging into the ground as it charged toward him, moving with terrifying speed. Ethan didn't hesitate. He aimed, pulling the trigger. The blast rang out and the creature howled, but it didn't stop. It lunged toward him, too fast for another shot. In that moment, everything slowed. Ethan's training kicked in. His body moved before he could think, rolling to the side and drawing his knife. He stood face to face with the beast, eyes locked, both calculating, waiting for the other to make the first move. The predator lunged. Ethan ducked and swung his knife, catching the beast across its exposed throat. The creature let out a deafening screech, but it wasn't enough. It turned, its claws reaching out for him, but this time he was ready. He dove under its massive body, driving the knife deeper into the creature's side. The predator let out a final roar before it collapsed, its body going limp in the dense foliage. Ethan stood panting, his chest heaving as he wiped the blood from his face. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the rush of survival. He had done it. He had faced an apex predator and killed it with nothing but his skill, his determination, and the will to survive. Ethan's pulse was still racing as he stood over the fallen predator. His knife was slick with the creature's blood, his chest heaving with each breath. The first kill was always the hardest, but this was different. He had faced countless enemies before, but nothing like this. The beasts of Earth didn't have the size, the strength, the sheer alien brutality that this thing had, yet he had survived. The jungle around him was eerily quiet, the heavy air pressing in on him, making every movement feel sluggish. He wiped his brow, sweat dripping down the side of his face, mixing with the blood on his hands. The body of the creature before him was still twitching slightly, but it was dead, and for a moment the silence stretched long and heavy. He knew he couldn't linger. This wasn't the time to reflect on his success, this wasn't the time for pride. Not yet. The council was watching. The challenge had only just begun. Ethan wiped his knife clean and sheathed it, then reached for his rifle. His senses were on high alert, but something told him this victory wouldn't come without a cost. The jungle had grown quiet for a reason. He could feel the eyes of something watching him, hidden in the thick underbrush, waiting for him to let his guard down. And then the ground rumbled again. This time it wasn't a low growl, it was something heavier, deeper, a shuddering vibration that made the leaves on the trees shake. He took a step back, eyes darting around the dense foliage. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he ignored it. He had no time for distractions. The real test was still out there. The new threat. The air around him shifted. The sounds of the jungle had vanished, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Ethan's instinct screamed at him to move, to take cover, but the ground beneath his feet kept trembling, and the distant roar only grew louder. Then, from the shadows, a massive figure emerged. It was unlike anything Ethan had seen before. Larger than the first creature, its body was plated in what looked like blackened reflective scales, with razor-sharp spikes protruding from its back. The beast's massive head was crowned with jagged horns, its eyes glowing like molten lava. Its maw was full of fangs that could crush bone with ease. Ethan's mind raced, but his body reacted instinctively. The creature's presence was an overwhelming force, intimidating in its sheer size and power. But Ethan didn't back down. He didn't hesitate. He had survived against all odds on Earth. He wasn't going to let a creature like this be his end. The creature let out a bone-shaking roar, and then it charged. Its massive claws dug into the ground as it moved with terrifying speed, shaking the earth beneath it. Ethan barely had time to raise his rifle before the beast was upon him. The first shot missed. The creature was too fast, its body a blur of muscle and scale. It was like a freight train, unstoppable. Ethan dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's massive claws. The jungle floor beneath him cracked as the creature's claws scraped through the dirt. Ethan scrambled to his feet, heart pounding in his chest. His rifle was useless at this range. He needed something more, something faster. The creature's roar filled the air again, a sound so loud it seemed to shake the very trees around him. Ethan's fingers tightened around his knife as he sprinted to the left, trying to circle around the beast. He couldn't engage it head-on, not yet. He needed to outsmart it. His eyes scanned the surrounding area, looking for anything he could use to his advantage. The dense jungle was full of natural traps, the vines hanging thick and strong. He could use the environment to his advantage. As the creature lunged again, Ethan ducked under its massive claws, rolling to the side just in time. He reached for his knife and threw it. The blade embedded itself deep into the creature's side, but it didn't stop. It roared again, swiping at him with terrifying speed. Ethan darted forward, diving into the underbrush. The beast turned, confused by his sudden movement. It hesitated, giving Ethan just enough time to leap onto a low-hanging vine. He pulled himself up into the trees, using the branches to climb higher, away from the deadly reach of the beast below. The moment of reflection. From his vantage point in the trees, Ethan watched the creature circle below, growling and snapping at the air. It was fast, too fast to engage directly, but there was one thing it didn't have: patience. Ethan steadied his breathing, his mind focused. He couldn't afford to panic. This creature was dangerous, but it wasn't invincible. He had already survived an apex predator once. He could do it again. As the beast paced beneath him, Ethan's mind flashed back to the council chamber, to the molten quartz skin leader who had mocked him. "Show me your fangs," the creature had said. But Ethan knew that wasn't what made a predator. Fangs and claws were simply tools. The real power came from choice. The choice to face the danger, to confront the challenge head-on, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. He didn't need to be faster, he didn't need to be stronger, he just needed to be smarter. The final stand. The jungle was a labyrinth of danger, but it also held secrets. Ethan had been trained to read his environment, to use it to his advantage. The beast below him was relentless, but it wasn't invulnerable. Ethan had seen how it moved slowly, clumsily when it was distracted. It wasn't used to a fight like this. It was used to hunting prey that didn't fight back. Ethan waited for the perfect moment. The beast charged again, its claws slashing through the air. Ethan didn't move until the last second, jumping from the vine and landing on a high branch above the creature. He leaped onto its back, driving his knife into the soft spot between its armored plates. The creature howled in pain, rearing up, trying to shake him off. Ethan held on, his grip tight as he plunged the knife deeper, twisting it with all his strength. It was a gamble, but it worked. With a final roar, the creature collapsed, its massive body crashing to the jungle floor. Ethan staggered off its back, breathless, his hands trembling from the effort. His heart hammered in his chest, but he had done it. He had faced the ultimate test and survived. The creature's body lay still, its glowing eyes fatting as the life left it. Ethan stood over it, panting, the weight of his success settling in. Ethan stood at the edge of the dense Vantor jungle, sweat and blood dripping down his face, his body sore from the intense battle. The massive predator he had just slain lay motionless behind him, its once vibrant eyes now dull. But the feeling of victory was fleeting. His heart still pounded and his mind raced, processing everything that had just happened. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving to the Council that humanity could stand as equals with the galaxy's fiercest predators. But there was no time to rest, no time to savor the win. The jungle had gone eerily quiet after the creature's death. The silence was unnatural heavy. The air felt thick with anticipation, and Ethan could feel eyes watching him, hidden, waiting for his next move. He turned around, quickly scanning the jungle, every sense heightened. The Council's message from earlier echoed in his mind. Failure to arrive within the time limit will result in immediate revocation of your status. The clock was ticking. His wrist device beeped again, and he glanced down at it, the message from the Council flickering to life on the screen. You have completed Phase 1. Proceed to the designated extraction point in the Vantor crater within 48 hours. You will encounter additional predators along the way. Do not fail. The extraction point, it was a safe zone, or so the message implied. He knew better than to trust it completely. This wasn't just about surviving one battle, it was about proving that humanity could endure against the odds in every scenario, no matter how impossible. He took a deep breath and activated his comms. Nora, I'm headed to the crater. What's the situation on your end? The voice on the other side was calm, but there was a hint of urgency. We're tracking your progress. Your victory in Phase 1 has been recorded, but there's something you need to know. There's another faction out there watching you, other predators, not from the Council, but from factions who have an interest in your failure. Ethan's jaw tightened. He had suspected as much. The galaxy wasn't as unified as the Council made it seem. There were always those who stood in the shadows, ready to undermine others for their own gain. What kind of predators? Ethan asked, pulling the strap of his rifle tighter across his chest. Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. There's a rogue delegation from the Drenny Expanse that has taken an interest in your trial. They believe your success will threaten their place in the hierarchy. They won't let you complete this challenge easily, be careful. Ethan's eyes narrowed, the Drenny Expanse. He remembered their leader, cold, calculating, and utterly convinced of the superiority of his species. The Drenny weren't the type to let something like humanity's rise slide. If they wanted to sabotage him, they would. I'll be careful, Ethan said, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a formality. The Drenny wouldn't just sabotage him, they would want to eliminate him entirely. He glanced around, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just a test of survival. This was a game of politics, power, and war. If he didn't complete the trial and reach the extraction point, humanity's Tier 4 status would be revoked. If he failed, Earth would be cast aside, dismissed as nothing more than an anomaly, a species too fragile to survive in the wilds of the galaxy. Ethan wasn't going to let that happen. He had come this far and there was no turning back. The journey through the crater. Ethan pushed deeper into the jungle, making his way toward the Vantor crater. The terrain was treacherous, but he was used to it. His training, his scars, and the hard lessons from Earth's wilds had prepared him for this. The jungle had become a living, breathing organism, its foliage thick and unforgiving, the undergrowth constantly shifting with the movement of unseen creatures. He could feel the presence of something nearby, lurking in the shadows. He wasn't alone. A flash of movement caught his eye, something fast, too fast for him to react. Before he could reach for his weapon, a massive form emerged from the trees, leaping toward him. A predator, but this one was different. Its body was sleek and black, covered in armored plating that glinted in the dim light. It had sharp claws, long and vicious, and glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the jungle's dense canopy. The creature's roar shook the ground beneath Ethan's feet, and before he could react, it lunged toward him, its claws aimed directly at his face. Ethan rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. He could feel the air shift as the predator's claws grazed his shoulder. The pain was immediate, but he didn't have time to react. He was on the move again, using the terrain to his advantage. He darted behind a massive tree, his heart pounding in his chest. The predator circled, its glowing eyes scanning the shadows. It was faster than the first creature he had faced, more agile. This wasn't just a test of strength, it was a test of speed, of reflexes. Ethan's pulse raced as the creature moved in for another attack. This time he was ready. He leaped from his hiding spot, grabbing a vine hanging from one of the jungle's towering trees. The predator followed, its claws swiping at the air, but Ethan was already swinging from the vine, using his momentum to get above the creature. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small explosive device, a last resort. He had learned to carry them after a mission in the jungles of South America, when the only way to survive an ambush was to use the environment to your advantage. With precision, Ethan tossed the explosive down just as the predator leaped toward him. The blast was deafening, sending a shockwave through the trees. The creature screamed as the explosion hit, its body thrown backward into the jungle's dense foliage. Ethan landed lightly on the ground, his rifle in hand, scanning for any sign of movement. The jungle fell silent again, the air thick with tension. The shadow of the Drenny. As he continued his journey toward the Vantor crater, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The Drenny Expanse's interest in him wasn't just a political maneuver, it was personal. They wanted to prove that humans didn't belong among the galaxy's predators, that their rise was nothing more than a fluke. The jungle was silent, but Ethan knew the Drenny weren't the type to play fair. He had to move faster, be smarter, and anticipate their next move. Every step was a risk now. Finally, after hours of moving through the jungle, Ethan saw it, the Vantor crater in the distance. It was a natural clearing, a place of significance, but the terrain around it was brutal. He could see shadows moving in the distance, and he knew that his next trial wouldn't be any easier. As he entered the crater's edge, the ground began to shake again. This time, it wasn't just the jungle's usual tremors. The ground cracked, and from beneath the earth, massive creatures began to emerge. These were the true predators of Vantor, the ones that the Council had used to test their applicants, and this time there was no room for mistakes. The creature that emerged from the depths of the Vantor crater was like nothing Ethan had seen before. It was colossal, a true apex predator with a sleek obsidian body and armor-like scales that shimmered in the dim light. Its massive jaws, lined with rows of razor-sharp teeth, gaped open in a chilling display of dominance. Each step it took caused the ground to quake beneath him, and its glowing eyes never left him, tracking his every movement. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just another test. This was a fight for humanity's place in the galaxy. The stakes had never been higher. The ground beneath him trembled again as the beast roared, sending a shockwave through the crater. Ethan's pulse quickened. He had no more time to waste. He could already feel the weight of the council's scrutiny pressing on him. He had made it this far, and there was no turning back. He reached for his rifle, checking the power levels and setting it to its highest setting. The weapon wasn't ideal for a creature of this size, but it was all he had. He was going to need more than just firepower to take this thing down. He needed to outthink it, outmaneuver it, and survive. The creature lunged, its powerful limbs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. Ethan barely had time to react. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the beast's massive claws as they slashed through the air where he had been moments before. He rolled to his feet, heart pounding, and fired a shot. The blast hit the creature's armored hide, but it didn't even flinch. The armor was too thick, too impenetrable. Ethan knew he had to get closer, get inside its defenses, but how? His mind raced. The council had chosen this creature for a reason. It wasn't just a brute force test. It was about strategy, adaptability, and making use of the environment. The Vantor crater was full of jagged rocks, deep crevices, and the remnants of long-forgotten caves. There had to be something he could use. The beast roared again, its enormous jaws snapping shut just inches from him. Ethan leaped backward, his foot catching on a loose stone. He stumbled, but quickly regained his balance. As the creature advanced, he scanned the terrain. There, a small ledge high above the creature where the ground was unstable, just like the terrain he'd encountered earlier. He had to make it there. It wasn't just a vantage point, it was a strategic move. If he could get above the creature, he might be able to land a precise shot or, even better, set a trap. The fight for survival. Ethan sprinted toward the ledge, weaving through the jagged rocks and debris. The beast followed, its massive form crashing through the terrain, not caring for the destruction it caused. Ethan's legs burned as he ran, his body protesting with each step, but he pushed on. The creature was close now, and the only way he could survive was to stay one step ahead. He reached the ledge, scrambling up the rocks, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The creature was close now, and it wasn't slowing down. He could hear its massive claws scraping against the stone as it moved toward him. He turned, taking a deep breath. He had no choice now. He had to fight this thing or he would die trying. The creature lunged once more, and Ethan dove forward, narrowly avoiding the beast's claws as they swiped down at him. He rolled and used the momentum to climb to his feet, taking aim with his rifle. This time he wasn't aiming for the armor. He was aiming for the eyes. With a steady hand, he fired. The shot hit its mark, one of the creature's glowing eyes shattered with a deafening roar. The beast howled in pain, reeling back, disoriented. Ethan didn't waste time. He fired again, hitting the other eye. The creature staggered, disoriented, blinded by the two shots. Ethan knew this was his moment. The creature, now weak and vulnerable, began thrashing about, its roars filling the air. Ethan rushed forward, closing the distance between them. He had no weapon left, but his knife was still sheathed at his side. He unsheathed it, his grip tight, and leapt onto the creature's back, plunging the blade deep into the soft tissue between the creature's armored scales. It screamed in pain, its body bucking beneath him, but he held on. He twisted the knife, feeling the resistance give way as the creature's life force began to ebb away. It was the final blow. With a final, deafening roar, the creature collapsed to the ground, its massive body shuddering one last time before it lay still. The end of the trial. Ethan collapsed beside the creature's body, his breath ragged, every muscle in his body aching from the fight. He had done it. Against all odds, he had survived. The jungle around him was silent once more, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't the heavy, oppressive quiet of a predator stalking its prey, it was the calm that comes after a storm. The council would have seen everything. They would have watched him fight and win, but it wasn't over yet. His wrist device buzzed again. He glanced at it. The council's message was brief. Trial complete. Proceed to the extraction point. Humanity's status has been upgraded to Tier 4 Apex Predator. Ethan exhaled sharply, the tension releasing from his body. He had done it. Humanity had made it. He had survived the trial and proven to the Council and to the galaxy that Earth's place among the predators was earned, not by fangs or claws, but by the will to survive, to adapt, and to protect. Final reflection. As Ethan made his way to the extraction point, the victory felt hollow. The Council had granted humanity Tier 4 status, but this trial wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The galaxy was watching, the Drenny expanse, the factions in the shadows. They hadn't forgotten about him. They would try again in ways both subtle and direct to undermine humanity's place, but Ethan wasn't afraid. Humanity's true strength wasn't in its ability to fight, it was in its resilience, its will to stand when others would fall, and Ethan Reyes was living proof of that. He would continue to fight not just for himself, but for the future of humanity among the stars. Epilogue. Months passed, and humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy became more secure with each passing day. The Council, once skeptical, now saw humanity for what it was, a species capable of surviving, of thriving in the harshest environments. But as time passed, new challenges arose, political, social, and military. The Drenny expanse still watched from the shadows, their influence lingering, but humanity had made its mark. And Ethan Reyes, he continued to train the next generation of Earth's apex predators, teaching them to survive, to adapt, and to rise above. Because the galaxy had learned one thing about humanity: when prey fights back, predators beware.